With the LAN equipment completed, we can now move into our routed connections as we start rebuilding the small office network part 2. Now what I plan on doing here is the same thing that we did in the previous video, which is walking through the concepts as we do the configurations. And we are going to be focusing on routers. There's a bit more to the router world than the switch world, so what I plan on doing is breaking this into 2 separate videos, and that way we can take our time and walk through these router configurations without feeling rushed. So let's move back to the topology. I've added a little bit more information. What I've done here is labeled each one of the router interfaces that are going to be connecting our network together. So that way at least we know what we're configuring. You can see that we have 3 routers. They're in our halos here. Router 1, 2, and 3. 1 being our internet connection. Now, in this video and these setting up the small office network, I'm going to leave the internet connection a mystery for now. The reason why is if you went through the icnd2 series, we set up NAT using the SDM, the graphic interface. Well, in this series, we're going to be setting up NAT using the command line interface. It's much more fun. But I'm going to leave that to when we get to the official NAT section. So for now, the internet connection will be mysterious. Over here, we've got router 1 connected to the LAN, and all of this area over here represents the 192.168.1 subnet. So all of that information will start with 192.168.1.x. You can see that I've got our switch IP address already added in, and while we haven't configured them, I decided to put the IP addresses on the diagram so we knew what we'd be getting into as we walk through the configuration. We have a WAN link that's going to be connecting router 2 and router 3, and router 3 will have a LAN connection over here that will allow us to do some tests from our headquarters, which is this zone, over to our branch office on the other side. So in the beginning, let's start off by wiping out our configurations on each one of these routers. Now I want to make sure that you guys know how I'm set up here. I have an access server, and what that is, and I'll explain a little bit more about this later on in the series, but it is a box that has cables run to the console port of every single one of these devices. That way I don't have to run to the other room and move my console cable every single time I want to move around. It's a pretty awesome device that allows me to telnet into one box, and then it's known as a reverse telnet. I reverse telnet into the console connection of all the other routers. So when you see me go into the management console, I don't want you to be confused. All I have going on here is just a access server or reverse telnet connection to each one of the routers. So let's start off by wiping out the configs. I'm going to go to router 1. Do not enter, you will certainly perish. I actually don't even remember setting that up. So I'm going to do a write erase, erasing the NVRAM file system. Looks like we got a little duplex mismatch action there too that we'll have to fix when we reload it. So I'll type in reload. Enter, enter. So we'll get that router rebooting. I'm going to do a Control-Shift-6X, which you might remember suspends telnet sessions. It's the same thing on this access server. And then I'm going to go over to router 2. I have little aliases set up that if I just type the number, it pops me over to the router. So that way you understand how I'm hopping between all these devices. Get into privilege mode. All the passwords are Cisco. So I'll type in erase startup config. Same thing as write erase. While that's doing it, you'll see how I increase my speed here. Get in, erase. Let's just do a write erase on that guy. Pause, go back to router 2. See the speed, reload, router 3. Oh, we're still hanging there. Waiting for the prompt to come back. There we go, reload. All right, so with that, we now have wiped out the configs on all 3 of those routers in the same way that we wiped out the configuration on the switch. Now, all 3 of those are rebooting, and that's the benefit of using that access server is if you want to, you can actually watch them reboot, unlike a telnet session, because I'm plugged in from my access server, from this router right here, to the console port, so we can watch reloads and things like that. Now, I don't plan on watching all these routers reload. We'll scroll back and see in the history at least one of them, so we can review that. But once I'm going to pause the video. Once we come back, we'll walk through the security on each one of these routers, and I'll show you how to increase your speed in configuring multiple routers there as well. All right, I've been watching the routers, and it looks like router 2 is officially rebooted. So let's go ahead and check off our wiping out the configurations, and we'll start off with router 2. The other 2 are still booting right now, and get the passwords and banner message set up. So pop up our configuration, hop over to router 2. It's asking us if we would like to enter the initial config dialog since it has no configurations, and we'll say no. Press return to get started. We'll wait for a second as it spews a bunch of console messages onto our screen just saying everything is now ready. You don't have to worry. Anytime you see a bunch of stuff like that, just hit the enter key. So I'm now sitting on the router. Just like the switch, move into privilege mode. First thing I'll do is block the privilege mode, or I should say secure it. So I'll type in enable secret, and the password will be Cisco. Just like the switch, line VTY04, require logins, and the password is Cisco. Now, just so you know, this command, while I'm in the habit of typing it, it's on VTY lines by default. So when you pull a router out of the box, it requires logins. And that's great, because if you didn't know that and you set up an IP address on your router, somebody could secretly telnet in before you had a chance to get in there and set passwords and so on. So logins are required on telnet ports by default, but they're not required on the console port and the aux port. So I'll type in login there, password Cisco. Not Siski, Cisco. And the aux port, which a switch does not have, is used to connect a modem. But you have to be careful because if you connect to the console port with the console cable and find out that I have a password, you can actually move your cable right over to the aux port and it works identically to the console port. So you'll be able to hop right in on the auxiliary port there as well. So what was I doing? Password on the aux port of Cisco. Good. So we've got the passwords configured. Now let's set up our logon banner. So I'll do banner, MOTD, and we'll go ahead and use the pound symbol on this guy. I like the asterisks. Please don't log in. We'll be courteous this time. Throw some asterisks on there and end with that pound symbol. That ends our logon banner, and now that's secured. So we've got all the passwords set. I'm just running through my mind. Enable secret, enable password, or, well, we're just using the enable secret here. The console port, the VTY port, the auxiliary port, we're all locked down. Now, one thing we didn't do on the switch that I would like to do on my router is encrypt everything. Because by default, when you set up your router, only the enable secret is encrypted. I'm doing a show running config, and I can see I've got gibberish for that, but if I scroll down to the bottom here, I can see that my console port, auxiliary port, and the VTY lines all have Cisco and clear text. So I'm going to go into global config mode and type in service password encryption. Now, what that will do is encrypt any clear text password that's on my router now and in the future. So that service password encryption is saved in the running config, and if later on I add different passwords, it will encrypt them as well. Now, do keep in mind that the service password encryption is never as secure as the enable secret. There are actually websites out there that you can go to and paste this in there if you can get that, and it will unencrypt it for you. That's pretty dangerous. So the point of that kind of encryption is just to keep the clear sight. You know, if somebody was looking over your shoulder, it's a lot tougher to remember that than it is the password Cisco. So we're good to go on this router, and what I want to do is give myself a shortcut for the other routers. Let me just make sure that, oh, I still got a few more things. I'm going to do the name and work environment, get my work environment set up just like I did on the switch. Now this is router 2, so we'll get in and do the host name R2. Name is done. We'll go under line console 0, logging synchronous, and line VTY04, also logging synchronous, just hitting the up arrow on my keyboard to recall those commands. That, again, allows the messages to come through the console port without interrupting what I'm typing. I'll do a no IP domain lookup from global configuration mode, which means if I'm in privilege mode and type something invalid, it won't hang there for 60 seconds or 30 seconds. One thing I forgot under the console port is for this series and this lab environment, I'm going to turn off the exec timeout, which allows this console port not to kick me off after such and such amount of idle time. So I'll save my configuration. We've got the name and work environment configured on this router. Now I'm ready to save myself some time on these other routers. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to back up my configuration by using the same method I used when I was backing up the switch. Just doing a show run. Come back here to where I first typed that. Go from the exclamation point and go shump all the way down. It's Alt-C in Terraterm. It's a little backwards from the Control-C that we're used to. I'll open up Notepad, bring it in here, and paste. Now what I'm going to do is go through this running configuration and remove things that I know the other routers don't have. For instance, version 12.4. I don't know that the other routers have that version of iOS. Host name, I'll just kind of wipe that out because I'm going to type that in for each router. Enable secret, that's going to be the same. You know, oh, voice card. I know the other routers don't have voice cards because they're not voice routers. All of the interfaces I'm going to remove because I have different interfaces on all my routers. Now that one would be up to you if you were configuring a bunch of routers in your environment that had all the same interfaces, well, then keep the interfaces in there. Other routers don't have voice ports, probably don't even have a control plane. Logon banner, that's good. Got that. Console port, they've all got that. Aux port. They don't all have this line 130. That's specific to the router that I'm working on. You can see my VTY lines, web VPN, all that kind of thing. Other routers don't have. So what I'm doing is I'm just going through all of this configuration and kind of cleaning it up. See what I mean? To where it's just a base configuration. And now what I can do is modify it to work for these other routers. I've got router 2 done, so let's do R1. And remember our objectives, they were to wipe out the configs, done, password and banner, name and work environment. Well, now I have a great configuration that can do that for both routers. So I'll start with router 1. I'll do a select all, copy, pop up here, Control-Shift-6X back to my access server and down to router 1. Now router 1's asking me, do I want to enter initial config? And while I'm doing that, I'm going to hop over to router 3 because it hangs there for a little while and answer no on that guy as well. See how you can start moving pretty quick. And that way I can get both of them kind of working on that processing while it's waiting for that press return to get started. So we'll hit enter. Let our messages slide through. There we are, user mode. Now check this out. I'm going to go into global config. Don't paste it into privilege mode because these are all global config commands. I've already copied it to my clipboard, so in Terraterm, all I need to do to paste is click my right mouse button. Click, click. Isn't that great? Look at that. Done. What I've done is now configured router 1 with all the same settings that I used for route. Oh, I missed one of them. This one doesn't have the resource policy command. Different versions of the iOS will do different things, but that's okay. It just gives you an invalid thing. So with that, I can now save my config on router 1, hop over to router 3, which is happily sitting on its user mode prompt. Come back here. There's only one thing I'm going to change, and that is my host name. Control-A, Control-C, copy that to my clipboard. Go into global config and right-click, paste. So I put that in there, wham, just like that. We now have steps 1 through 3 done on all 3 routers by using that shortcut, and I'll save my configuration. Now we can move into the interfaces themselves. We need to assign the IP addresses, get the speed, duplex, and descriptions assigned so that we can have a good idea of what these things connect to. I'd like to go in order on these ones since they're all booted and everything's configured. So let's start off on router 1 right over here. So I've got router 1. My favorite all-time Cisco command is show IP interface brief, where I can see what interfaces I have. I notice this has Ethernet 0001 and serial 0/0. Now I'm looking at the network diagram and it looks like Ethernet 00 is plugged into fast Ethernet 0/1. So let's configure that one. Go into global config mode, and I'm going to show you a shortcut that this is, by the way, bonus information, but I do this on every Cisco router that I work on. I love show IP interface brief so much. I type in alias exec s show IP interface brief on every router I work on, so that way I can just hit S and get a quick status report on all the interfaces on my router. Alias exec is how you make an alias for the exec mode, meaning the privilege mode. So I'm into global config. Let's get under Ethernet 0/0. I'm first going to do a no shutdown, and then I'll do IP address 192.168.1.1. There we go. So we've got that IP address configured now on the interface, and we configured the switch in the last section. So let's make sure that we are able to ping from, ooh, let's stop right there. I'm going to ping from the router to the switch, but before I do, I want to hit this duplex mismatch. Now, if you haven't worked on Cisco routers very long, this is one of those guaranteed messages you're going to get at some point in your Cisco career. This is something that's detected by CDP. CDP discovers it and says there's a duplex mismatch between your interface, Ethernet 0/0, which is not full duplex, with CBT switch 2, fast Ethernet 0/1, which is full duplex. That's the way to read these, because if you don't read them that way, they sound confusing. It says discovered on that, not full duplex with this, is full duplex. So in essence, we know, because we did it in the last video, that we hard-coded CBT switch 2 to be full duplex on fast Ethernet 0/1. So while we're under this interface, I'm going to type in duplex full. Enter. Now we're hard-coded here as well. Now, since this is an Ethernet 0/0, there is no speed command. You can see it, nothing that starts with SP, because there's only 10 megs per second on Ethernet 0/0 interfaces. All right, now let's exit back out. We've got our duplex hard-coded. You know what? Before I do that, let's type in description link to CBT switch 2. There we go. Now we've got the description speed duplex IP address done. Let's make sure we can ping 192.168.1.10, which is our switch. And no. Oh, wait. I just remembered. I did something. I didn't tell you guys, but I did something. I guess now is a good time to tell you. No, it's a horrible time to tell you, but I'm going to tell you now anyway. What I did was, remember when we were doing the previous video and I set up CBT switch 2? Remember how I set up the VLAN 1 interface with the IP address? Let me do a show IP interface brief over here on the switch because I have to expose well, confess here what I've done. I am going to be using VLAN 50 for everything. Now, I know we haven't talked about VLANs. That's why I said it's a horrible time to explain this. But what I've done is I've assigned this VLAN 50, which is a VLAN that shoots through all of the rooms in this building that I'm talking to you in right now. The reason I did that is because if I left it on VLAN 1, I would have to run into the other room anytime I wanted to move things around, move a cable, things like that. But by assigning everything to VLAN 50, which is reachable from any room in this building, that means that I don't have to run into the other rooms. Now, come back to the problem. That's again my 5-second view of VLANs before we fully describe them. The reason this is not working correctly is I forgot, it just hit me, to assign all of the interfaces to that VLAN, including the one that I'm working on now. So I'm going to give you a sneak preview of a command you will do many times when we get into the VLAN section. I'm going to type in interface range fast Ethernet 0/1 through 24. Well, let's do 1 through 20. I think those last 4 are used for something. I'm going to type in switch port access VLAN 50. Enter. What that does, in again, the 10,000-foot view, is put all 20 of those interface into this VLAN. So now you can see that I have the IP address assigned to the switch on VLAN 50. All the interfaces are in VLAN 50, which means fast Ethernet 0/1 right here is now in VLAN 50. Let me see if I can give you a better description here. This is in VLAN 50. This IP address is on VLAN 50. So now this router should be able to go through that interface to reach this IP address. If that doesn't make sense, forgive me. But we will fully describe that when we get into VLANs later on. So now that I've done that magic, let me jump back over to my router 1 that I was working on and try that ping command again. If I could tell you the pain, oh, okay, good. I was going to say, if I could tell you the pain I feel in my heart right now, it's good. The reason sometimes it takes a moment for the pings to go through is because we have the ARP request. We also had the VLAN switcheroo that I just did. It takes some time to process that. So now when I'm doing it, I'm getting 5 successful pings each and every time. So we have connectivity now between router 1 and our CBT switch. I need to put a good name on that guy. So let's hop over to router 2. Here we are. show IP interface brief, and meanwhile, let's go into global config mode, alias exec s, and copy, paste. So I'm now going to go into my fast Ethernet 0/0 port and configure it with the IP address 192.168.1.1. I believe it was 2. Let me just verify that. 1.2 right there. Good to go. 255.255.255.0. Enter. No shutdown. You don't want to forget that one. So we now have fast Ethernet 0/0 up. I'll just do a parallel jump. Cisco allows you to jump modes without exiting back to global config. So I'll just go straight into serial 0/1/0. Which reminds me, I need to change that label right there. The router 2 is the newest router that I have. It's a 2811. And let me just see if I can find that label real quick. There we go. Serial 0/1/0. It uses the newer syntax for the ports. And if you haven't seen these before, this is module 0 on the switch, port, or sorry, I should say VIC card 0, and then port 0. The way this router looks, I should say WIC card, is we have this router right here. It's got 2 built-in Ethernet interfaces, a console port, and so on. And it's got this big module over here, like this. And that module allows me to slide in this big blade. If I could zoom out on that, it would be this big blade right here that allows you to have up to 2 little WIC cards that you can put inside of there, which can support up to 2 ports per WIC card. So when I'm doing serial 0/1/0, I'm saying module 0, VIC card 1, this is VIC card 0, and then port 0 on that VIC card, because all the numbering in Cisco begins from 0. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm typing in that syntax right there. And now we've got it corrected on our network diagram, so let's jump back there. I'm going to type in IP address, and this one was 192.168.2.1. I'm going to double check that in a moment, and I'll do a no shutdown. Good. So what we've got, if I jump back and hit S, now that I've got my shortcuts in place, is I have this fast Ethernet 0/0 interface, which is currently up, line protocol up, so we are communicating there. And let's just make sure we can ping to our LAN. That's our switch IP address. Come on, switch. Where are you at? There you go. And let's ping the other router, 192.168.1.1. There we go. So we have successful pings going to the switch, to the router. Our LAN connection is working well. Now, if you look at our WAN connection, let me hit the S key again, you notice that serial 0/1/0 is down and the line protocol is down. Now, remember, this is the physical and this is the data link. So something right now is physically wrong with that line. And I think I know what it is. In this lab environment, we have a crossover serial connection. You always use crossover serials because you don't want to pay for a full T1 line to connect 2 routers in the same room with you. So it's just a cross between them. But remember, on every serial connection, there is one side of the cable that is considered a DCE, and the other side is considered a DTE end of the connection. Now, in the typical quote-unquote real world, the DCE always connects to the service provider. So that'll be our link to our CSU, DSU, or whatever we're connecting to the service provider with, because this side sets the clocking or the speed of our connection. The DTE, data terminal equipment, always connects to us, our end of the router. But in a lab environment, we are the service provider and we are the DTE. So whatever end of this cable is plugged in, that's the DCE, will have to set the clocking for the line. Now, without physically looking at the cable, there is a command that you can type in. It is show controllers serial, and I'll look at 0/1/0. Enter. And I can see that this side, great, this side has the DCE end of the cable. And it has a clock rate that is already set on that. Now, this is in bits per second. So that is, I believe, if I got all my zeros in order there, that's 2 megabits per second that it's setting the clock to. So this side is the DCE and the clocking. So why is it down? Well, the reason why is because the other side is shut down. So since the other side is completely terminated, it's not getting any electrical signal on this interface at all. So we need to go configure router 3 before we can power this one on. So let's save our config there. And did I do that on one? I'll do it now just in case. And then let's hop over to router 3. So I'm on router 3, show IP interface brief, global config mode, alias exec. This is probably something I could have done in my little script, eh? That's for all you Canadians out there. So we've got show IP interface brief, that's now abbreviated. And I'm going to get under serial 0/0. Since that one's on my mind, let's get that one first. And I'll do an IP address. This one is 192.168.2. I believe it's 2. So we'll check. Yep, router 3, 2.2. And just while we've got it up here, this is Ethernet 00, and that is 3.1. So I'm going to do 2.2. No shutdown. So let's watch some of those status messages to see what happens there. I'll do, yep, you can see right there, interface changed to up and line protocol changed to up. So that immediately tells me physical layer is good and the data link layer is good. Let's take a momentary pause and hop back over to router 2 real quick. Let's just do that show IP interface brief there. You see why I love this command so much? It's awesome. If I could have my one command, that's all I could type, this would be it. And I can see up and up. It's now gone up on router 2 as well because it now sees router 3 as online. So while we're back on router 3, I'll get back under Ethernet 0/0, IP address 192.168.3.1, 255.255.255.0, and I will type in a bonus command. This is a hint for any of you that would like to create a lab environment. This interface, as of right now, is not connected to anything. I'm going to actually simulate this PC by using a loopback address. I'll show you how we're going to do that later on. But if you set up a lab environment, it's a complete waste to attach a computer to the other end and use up a switch and all that just to have it sitting there to ping it. So what a lot of people will do is simulate a LAN connection by turning off what's known as the keep alives on an Ethernet interface. I'm going to type in no keep alive and then do a no shutdown. What that does is tell the Ethernet interface, don't look at yourself. I'm trying to think of a good way to say that. Don't even think about checking to see if you're really there. Don't send out any keep alive messages to see if something's alive on the other end. So that way, even though it doesn't have a cable plugged in, it's always going to show up and up, which gives us a great virtual connection that we can test for pinging, and we can, always show that as up. Now, if you have bonus equipment, you want to connect a switch and another PC over there, great. Feel free to do it. But this is a great way to simulate as if stuff was actually there. So we've got the identity. We've identified all the interface, show IP interface brief, the IP address, speed, and duplex. I've got to admit, I kind of skimped on the descriptions, but we're okay with that. We've got an accurate network diagram, and as long as you have an accurate network diagram sitting in front of you, that's just great. You don't need descriptions because you can just look at the picture. And I'd like to stop this video right there because that gives us the core of the router setup. And I'd like to have some extra time as we get into routing. Talk about the default internet route. We'll get that internet interface up. And RIP routing, because we are going to talk a lot about routing protocols and how RIP is the worst routing protocol in the world. But that's later on in the series. At least RIP will lay the foundation of all the concepts. So for now, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.